Not long ago, CD Projekt Red presented a tech demo set in the world of The Witcher 4 at the State of Unreal 2025. It showcased the detailed foliage, realistic animations, and lively crowds in an open world, all running in real time on a base PlayStation 5 at 60 FPS. It was impressive, no doubt, but it also raised some concerns. There's been a lot going on in the gaming world over the past week. So many exciting topics I'd love to dive into. But the one thing that really grabbed my attention was the Witcher 4 tech demo we saw at the State of Unreal. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking. Come on, the devs already confirmed it's just a tech demo. It doesn't represent the final game. And you are right. I'm not expecting the final game to look exactly like that unless it's dropping 2 console generations from now. The issue is, it feels like yet another marketing move that quietly sets expectations without being fully upfront. And let's be honest, it definitely got people talking, which is probably exactly what they wanted. But that kind of attention can backfire. It creates hype based on something that isn't actually representative of the final game. And in the long run, I don't think that helps the gaming community or CDPR or The Witcher 4 at all. Didn't we just go through this with CyberPunk 2077? That game launched less than 5 years ago and is still fresh in people's mind. You'd think CD Projekt Red would approach this kind of reveal with a bit more caution, but instead we get another amazing in-engine showcase with just enough ambiguity to blur the line between demo and promise. And that's the real problem. It's not the visuals or the performance claims, it's the messaging. If CDPR has truly learned from the past, they need to start showing it, not just in what they say, but in how they choose to present their games moving forward. Now, let's take a closer look at the launch of CyberPunk 2077. Even though the game is in a much better state today, that doesn't erase the fact that its launch was easily one of the worst in the past decade. CyberPunk 2077 was one of the most anticipated games of all time, riding on the massive success of CDPR's The Witcher 3. It promised an ambitious open-world RPG experience. The jaw-dropping announcement video, the almost CGI-like footage on E3 2018, and then they dropped Keanu Reeves as a major character. Boom, hype levels exploded. Pre-orders alone surpassed 8 million copies before the game even released. But if you remember the launch day of Cyberpunk 2077, it was a total disaster, especially for console players. Many people asked for refunds immediately because the game was basically unplayable. It's pretty wild that CDPR even released it in that state. Constant crashes, texture poppings, inconsistent frame rates, and calling it inconsistent is me being generous already, by the way. It really feels like they didn't care much about the console players back then. While I was playing on a PC with a decent setup at the time, so performance wasn't as big of an issue for me, but I remember hearing a lot of users with AMD graphic cards suffer serious render problems right at launch. Even on PC though, the bugs were everywhere. I think almost everyone who played day one experienced some kind of broken save or game-stopping glitch. Personally, I run into a bug where Jackie just disappeared after a boss fight. He was nowhere to be found, which meant I couldn't continue the story. I tried everything I found online, even cheat codes to bring him back, but nothing worked. In the end, I had to start a completely new save, losing about 12 hours of gameplay, or maybe even more if I'm remembering correctly. And let's not forget the ridiculous police system they had at launch. It was almost laughable, especially when you consider that Cyberpunk 2077 was hyped up as a serious competitor to GTA in open world design. Instead of feeling immersive or dynamic, the law enforcement mechanics were clunky and frustrating, totally breaking the flow and immersion. Now that I've covered how badly Cyberpunk 2077 launched, let's take a look again at the trailers they released back then. I think you'll quickly see just how much the marketing missed the mark, setting player expectations way too high. Another example of false expectations from a different series that I personally care a lot about is Halo Infinite. 343 Industries spent years hyping up the Slipspace engine, calling it the future of Halo. The tech demo looked looked incredible at the time, and they were even selling the idea that Halo Infinite would be the definitive Halo game for the next decade. But then came the E3 2020 gameplay reveal, and it all fell apart. The game looked so unfinished that the backlash forced Microsoft to delay its release. Even with the delay, the launch of Halo Infinite still turned out to be a miss in its own way. 343 clearly had no idea how to run a live service game, and honestly they shouldn't have tried in the first place. The game launched missing core features that older Halo titles had at launch, like Forge and Firefight, and it literally took them years to add infection mode, for God's sake. Unfortunately, it feels like CDPR is repeating some of those mistakes right now with The Witcher 4. As a showcase of Unreal Engine's new feature, I think the demo did its job. It successfully demonstrated what's possible with the latest tool and gave developers a glimpse of how those systems could benefit their own projects. And I have absolutely no problem with that. But the way CDPR presented it, they talked about how these new tools are helping them bring their vision to life, how the demo is running in real time on a PlayStation 5 at a stable 60 FPS. Even though they did briefly mention that this was a tech demo set in the world of The Witcher 4, a lot of people still walked away thinking, wow, so this is what the game is going to look and run like. And I can prove that this caused confusion because shortly after the demo, CDPR had to come out and clarify that it doesn't represent the final game. I mean, come on. They knew exactly what they were doing with how it was presented. It's like they thought they could get away with the hype without taking full responsibility for where it might lead. And like I mentioned earlier, that's exactly where the issue lies. They didn't learn from the past. Let's be real. The final game is almost certainly not going to hit that level of detail and performance, especially not on a base PlayStation 5 at 60 FPS. We've seen this before, and we all know how that story ends. So once again, CDPR has put themselves in a situation where they've raised the expectation to a height they probably can't deliver on. I actually talked about something similar in my video on the shadow drop of The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered. AAA game marketing these days builds too much anticipation, only to fall short way too often. And to be clear, I don't even think The Witcher 4 will be a bad game. Far from it. But false expectations, that's not something you want to mess with. It doesn't just damage trust. It hurts the player experience, and in the long run, it doesn't help the developers either. Another thing I want to talk about is Unreal Engine 5, which CDPR is using for The Witcher 4. So many Unreal Engine 5 games have launched with some kind of performance issue, and at this point, I basically expect it. The moment I hear Unreal Engine, I'm already bracing myself for a stuttery launch. Don't get me wrong, I get that Unreal Engine has to keep pushing the boundaries. Better graphics, better tools, more powerful features, that's all great. But here's the thing. When the average gamer doesn't have a setup that can even run these games properly, what's the point? We are already leaning so hard on frame generation and AI upscaling just to keep things playable. And honestly, I'm just tired of it. What's even worse is that some of these games don't even look that amazing and still ask for insane system requirements. At this point, I look at performance requirements almost like a form of accessibility. And right now, a lot of AAA games are slamming the door shut on a huge part of the player base. For example, when Monster Hunter Wilds launched, a bunch of my friends couldn't run it properly because their PCs couldn't handle it. And even for me, with frame generation on, I can barely getting a stable experience. I was actually more excited when I saw that Unreal Engine 5.6 seems to be focused more on performance. That's a step in the right direction. But realistically, I don't think we're going to see games using this new version anytime soon. At the end of the day, I'm not trying to hate on CDPR or The Witcher 4. I actually want The Witcher 4 to be great. I want it to surprise us in the best way. But we've seen this kind of thing before. Cool trailers, fancy tech demos, and big promises that don't match the final game. When the marketing makes it hard to tell the difference between a demo and real gameplay, it doesn't just build hype, it sets people up for disappointment. And when players feel let down, it's it's not just the game that suffers, it's the trust we have in the studio. Gamers are getting tired of needing super expensive PC just to run new games smoothly, tired of AAA studios over-promising and under-delivering, tired of the higher and higher prices we need to pay. So even though Witcher 4 tech demo looked great, I think we have to ask ourselves, are we seeing the future of video game or just another fancy illusion we don't get to experience anyway? What do you think of the tech demo of The Witcher 4? Please share in the comment section down below. And if you're enjoying this video, please like and subscribe so you don't miss the future content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.